All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling the French Open.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's one of those tournaments everyone's heard of, but
Right.
digging deeper, there's a lot more to it than I realized. And
Okay.
we've got Wikipedia to guide us, so we're gonna pull out all that good stuff.
Love it.
Like, okay, basic fact. It's the Grand Slam.
Of course, yeah. One of the big four.
But here's what blew my mind. It's the only one
Yeah.
still played on clay.
That's right. Makes it pretty unique.
I know. Like, why have they stuck with it when everyone else is grass or,
Mm-hmm. Hard courts?
hard courts? Exactly.
It's fascinating. Right, because you think about it, you see these power players,
Yeah.
on the other surfaces.
Yeah.
Big serves, ending points quickly.
Boom, boom, boom. Game over.
Exactly. Yeah. Clay, it kind of changes the whole game.
Really? So it's not just like, oh, it's a different surface. It actually affects how the game is played.
Totally does. Think about the surface itself. It's high friction, right? The ball doesn't zip through the court like on grass or a hard court.
Yeah.
You get a higher bounce, much slower pace. So suddenly, those huge serves,
Not so much of a weapon.
not as dominant, no.
Yep.
It becomes more about strategy.
So, okay, for someone like me, who's more into like the story than the sport itself, does that mean the French Open is like more exciting to watch?
I'd say so, yeah.
More back and forth, longer rallies?
Absolutely. Longer rallies, yeah. More emphasis on shot placement.
Interesting.
It's more about outmaneuvering your opponent, not just overpowering them.
See, this is the stuff I wouldn't know, just from like the basic facts, right?
Right.
I knew Nadal was the king of clay, but I never
Yeah.
thought about why that surface
It makes a difference.
would favor certain players.
Big difference. And that's just the modern game. You get to the beginning, is a whole other story.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
We're talking 1891, the tournament starts.
Yeah.
It was called the Championnat de France. Very fancy.
Fancy, yeah.
But, get this, only French club members could play.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously, no matter how good you were in the world, if you weren't in their little club,
You couldn't play?
no French Open for you.
That's wild. So it was like this super exclusive thing for decades.
It was for a long time, yeah.
I mean, that's got to make you wonder if there were some all-time great players who just never got a chance.
Absolutely.
Because they weren't French club material. Right?
You do have to wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And that evolution, from this closed-off thing to the global tournament it is today, that's a whole story in itself.
Okay, before we get too deep into history, though, I got to ask, who was this Roland Garros guy? Was he, like, the founder or something?
That's a good question. Most people assume that.
Right, because it's not his real name, is it? It's the name of the stadium.
Well, prepare to be surprised.
Yeah.
Roland Garros wasn't a tennis player at all.
No. Okay, then who was he?
He was a World War I pilot. A hero, actually.
Wow. Okay, that's not what I expected. So, like, was there any connection to tennis, or did they just think it was a cool name?
It does tie back to tennis, actually. It's connected to the French Davis Cup team. They were known as the Four Musketeers. Won the tournament in 1927 on American soil, no less. There was this big push to honor a war hero, and Garros fit the bill.
So they named this huge tennis tournament after a pilot. Wild. Like, what if Wimbledon was suddenly the Churchill Championships or something?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Adds a whole other layer to it, right?
Yeah.
Knowing the name has this whole backstory. But speaking of layers,
Yeah.
let's get back to that clay court. We were talking about how it changes the game.
Right.
And I think we've only just scratched the surface there.
Okay, yeah, we talked about it being slower. But what kind of players, like, really do well on clay?
Well, you mentioned Nadal, right?
Yeah, he's the king.
He's the perfect example. It's not just about being strong, though. It's footwork, stamina, mental toughness. Clay, you're grinding out points. Those rallies can last forever.
So it's almost like a marathon versus a sprint if you compare it to other surfaces.
We got it. And that's what plays into the hands of guys like Nadal, known for that endurance, retrieving almost any shot. You see a lot more drop shots, lobs, using spin to manipulate the ball. It gets really tactical.
Interesting. So it's more finesse than just raw power.
I just say so, yeah.
So does that mean someone who dominates on other surfaces, like someone known for their serve, might actually struggle on clay?
Definitely happens. Pete Sampras, great example.
Oh, yeah, he was huge.
Won 14 Grand Slams. But the French could never quite conquer it.
Huh.
Serve and volley style, so effective on faster courts, just didn't work as well on clay.
Wow. So even someone at that level, the surface can just throw them off.
Oh,
Really
right.
shows you how different the French Open is. But I guess it's not just the court itself that's changed, right? Over the years, the whole tournament's gone through some transformations.
Oh, for sure. Look at Roland Garros itself. They added a retractable roof over Court Philippe Chatrier.
Oh, right, to deal with the rain.
Exactly, yeah. Big change, no more weather delays, and then you've got Court Simone Mathieu with that incredible greenhouse design.
Yeah, I saw pictures of that. It looks amazing. Almost too pretty to play tennis in.
Definitely adds a unique visual to the tournament. But it's not just the looks. There have been important changes on the equality side, too.
Prize money, wasn't it?
Yeah. French Open, one of the first to have equal prize money for men and women.
Back in 2007, I think?
Yep, 2007. Huge step, recognizing female athletes properly. And more recently, they added night matches. That's pretty interesting.
Night matches? That seems like a big change for such a, traditional tournament. Was that controversial at all?
It did spark some debate, yeah. Some people, the traditionalists felt it kind of messed with the flow, but others loved it. The excitement, the energy of night matches.
Yeah, I can see that.
Good example of how the French Open is trying to balance that history with modernizing things.
Makes sense. Respecting the past, but not being afraid to try new things. But okay, one thing that really surprised me reading about all this.
Oh, what's that?
The whole ball boy and ball girl situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I never even thought about it before, but
it's a whole thing.
It's intense.
It is. The selection process is crazy rigorous. Thousands of kids, 11 to 16 years old, all competing for, 280 spots. And then once you're chosen, it's not just standing around. Weeks of training. Intense training.
Seriously. I guess they're right there in the middle of everything, those kids. They have to be so focused.
Absolutely. Anticipating what the players need, moving perfectly, staying calm under pressure. It's basically an elite program in itself.
That's wild. Imagine being, 12 years old with that kind of responsibility. It's like they're mini athletes themselves.
That's a good way to put it. It shows you the French Open's more than just the players on the court. It's this whole ecosystem, everyone working to make it happen.
It's amazing when you really look at it. Like, you think French Open, you think tennis, but there's all this other stuff going on. History, tradition, even how they're changing things up. It's really fascinating.
It all adds to it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
We started with the basic facts, right? Clay court only won Nadal, but we went way deeper than that.
We did, yeah. That's the fun part.
I think so, too. Like, how the clay actually changes how you play the whole history, going back to the 1800s.
And that pilot, who knew?
Right. Roland Garros, the war hero.
Yeah.
And even the ball kids. I never would have thought about all that goes into it.
They put them through the ringer, those kids.
So, honestly, I feel like I get the French Open now. Like, I always knew it was important, but now I get it.
That's what we like to hear.
So, as we're wrapping up, I'm curious. What's the one thing that stands out to you from all this stuff we learned?
That's a good question. I keep coming back to that clay court.
Yeah.
It really does shape everything. It's not just, here's the surface you play on. It affects how you play, what kind of player does well.
Right.
It's like the clay itself is part of the story of the French Open.
That's such a good way to put it. For me, it's that mix of tradition, but also them being willing to change.
Yeah.
It's a tournament with so much history, but they're not afraid to try new things,
Stay current.
Retractable roof, night matches. It's like they're saying, we respect the past, but we're also looking to the future.
Exactly. And that's a good thing for anyone watching the next French Open to keep in mind.
Right. Like, pay attention to how the players deal with that clay. Think about why it's called what it is.
Oh, and those ball kids.
Yeah.
They're like little ninjas out there.
They are. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the French Open. Hopefully everyone learned something new.
Me too.
And maybe you even see the tournament differently now.
I know I do.
And hey, maybe you'll even be inspired to do your own deep dive into something else.
Go for it.
There's always more to discover out there. Until next time, keep exploring.